All right. So here we will going to discuss where can I find the requirement. So as a BA analyst, the question you need to have would be where can I find all the requirements? What would be the requirement, or where can I go and ask to the people what kind of question I will going to ask. So first first thing is where you will going to ask the person. The first is domain expert, also known as SMEs, right? Subject matter experts. So the people who are very knowledgeable and work in the area of system this is being built, you can always ask them about what is the requirement, where can I find the requirement. The second is users, the people who will actually use the system. So in in some cases, user has a representative, so you can ask those representative instead of users. Because if we take the example what we discussed about Tesla, then you are not able to talk with each and every owner of Tesla vehicles, right? The third one is existing process and program. So performing a gap analysis that if we take the example of Tesla automotive autonomous driving, then whatever the previous version is and whatever the new version will going to build, what is the gap between the technology, what kind of functionality gap between them. So that is called the gap analysis. What kind of new feature is added. Existing is always there, but it will going to enhance the experience for the user perspective, right? So whatever is exist and live, you can always refer to that particular development, and it will only applicable for the process where you will going to enhance some existing system. If it is a entirely new development, you might don't have the existing system to refer to, right? But but in that case, you can always refer the similar solution of a competitor, or similar solution within an organization as well. So you can have analyze that particular solution. So if we talk about similar functionality, the similar functionality, there are a couple of companies they are working on this stuff, right? Autonomous vehicle. So if we talk about the super cruise or advanced cruise control in General Motors, so they are also kind of a semi automation driving providing by the General Motors. So you can refer them, what kind of functionality they have. You can go and drive the vehicle as well to understand what kind of functionality it has included into the vehicle. So it might be beneficiary for you as a business analyst to understand and consume whatever the things you are getting, to understand where can you find the requirement, right? Now let's talk about requirements hallucination tips. So whenever we are hallucinating the requirement, what kind of things you will going to do. If you are going to a JD session, which is a long session, what can you do before the session, what can you do after the session, during the session. So those kind of tips I'm going to provide you. So before session, make sure to invite the appropriate stakeholders to your session. So whenever you are creating any meeting before the session, you have to provide the list of the stakeholders who is included in the session. Don't miss any of the stakeholders. It will going to make a huge impact to the development of the project later on. So make sure to ask your project manager or the sponsor of the project and talk about that. If you are going to, if you missed anyone in the list or not. It's better to keep a Excel sheet of all the stakeholders, who is doing what, and what kind of things they are doing and what is their roles and responsibility during the project and what are their functionality during the organization as well. So that sheet you will keep it to yourself, you don't have to share with anybody, but that is for your personal use. Whenever you go to a new project, you have to create that kind of Excel sheet which include all the stakeholders, their role, their responsibility, and how they, what kind of weightage they are carrying during this project as well. Because there are some light stakeholders, their opinion everybody listen, but they will not going to consider. There are some stakeholders their opinion always heard and listen, and everybody approves it because he might be on very higher position in the company. So those kind of stuff you need to create for yourself to understand. And whenever you are sending something, there has to, if you have the list, you can check it, right? If you don't have it, you cannot check it, so don't miss anyone. Read all available documents. So whatever the document is exist in the organization related to the project, always refer before going into any session. Read thoroughly the current state of the system, what will be going to be the next change in the system, how it will going to impact all functionality feature and company progress as well. That you have to read about all the documentation whatever you grab. Look at the applicable reusable component in the project. So you have to look what can be reusable. So suppose we are talking about autonomous driving. This autonomous driving has some of the features which can be reusable during the process. So the image processing is much become a really faster, but the main algorithm should be same. So you can use that particular component again and again for this project as well. So whatever the component you can utilize reusability, whatever is existing, you can break it down and use those components rather than create a new way. It is always easy to use the design to make a wheel rather than reinventing the wheel, because reinvention of anything, it will going to take a lots of effort, time and money, and time you cannot buy it, right? So that's why reusability and understand the scope of the project and what are the components you can reuse, that is you need to analyze before go in the meeting, and you have to make the suggestion as well about it.
Can you give like a really kind example for this point?
I beg your pardon.
I mean, this point I didn't understand. So is it possible to explain in a more like a real time example?
And the reusability, usable component, that's what you are saying.
Yeah, for
Yeah, so
like a
as
reusable
I told
component.
you, right, in autonomous driving, you are doing the image processing again and again, right? So rather than developing a new image processing algorithm or the particular microservice or application, you will going to use the whatever is existing image processing system available from the previous version. So you can use that component as a reusable component for this project for the newer version. So that kind of thing, we can say as a reusable component. So there are some certain features. So suppose we talk about some certain functionality. So uh, there is a
Let's say,
project.
for example, the requirement as we discussed in the last example, like the home, right? I mean, the need is home. So the requirement
No, that is
this
not the
point
requirement.
clearly
That is need. The requirement is 3 bedroom tile. Those are the requirements. So suppose we take the example of the need of creating a home, and we have a three bedroom, one kitchen, one hall room, one room house, and it has to be three-story, and it has to be wooden floor. Everything is there, right? So whenever you are using that wooden floor, there is a wooden floor remaining. You can use, either you can use the tile in the bathrooms, or you can use the wooden floor, whatever is exist. So you can reuse that wooden floor and build it in a bathroom, rather than buy a new tile, because it is a wastage of whatever is existing. And you already purchased that. You cannot sell it because nobody will going to buy it. It is not that huge that somebody will going to buy it. It is small enough to use in some bathroom or something. So reuse those components while you are analyzing is much greater.
Kind of recycling.
No, recycle is another thing. Recycle is, you will going to break down the component and use that material to build something. That is a different thing. Recycle is different thing, and reusable is different thing. Some component you will not going to break it down and use that as it is. That is called reusable. And recycle, you will going to break it down, that particular component, and reuse it. Whatever the material you will get from that, reuse that material to create some new material or the same material.
Okay.
So
I
suppose you
got
have a glass of
understood.
bottle, right? So you have a fancy glass of bottle of wine. You drank it, the bottle is empty. You can throw it out, so it's a garbage. We can recycle. You can break it down and collect those glass. You will going to melt it down, that particular glass, and create something new thing. That is called recycle. Reusable thing, if you want to do that, you will going to use that bottle as it is and use it as a flower vase or something like that. That is called reusability. Do you understand the difference between reusability and recycle?
Yeah, yeah, very much.
Okay. So similarly, in some project, there are some software component you can reuse as it is. You will not going to make changes or recycle it, because recycling is a, there is no recycle thing in the software, right? How you will going to, if you're going to break it down, you have to create your own version, right? You have to refactor it. You can refactor it, but there is no recycle of the software. So that is called reusable component in the project, and that makes you very efficient business analyst if you use some technique to reusable component or reuse component which is exist. You will going to save time, money, a lot of things during the project. Research business domain you are working. You have to research about the business domain you are working, and read about everything. What kind of familiarize yourself with domain knowledge and context. This will make you comfortable to communicating with the stakeholders and will increase your professional value. So if you are going in a meeting in JID session or anywhere, and you don't know about the domain, you don't have the domain knowledge. Tesla is making electric car, but you don't understand, what is electric car, how they are functioning, what they are going to do, and what they want to achieve. So your professional value as a business analyst would be lesser within a team. If you want to make an impact, if you want to, if you want that everybody will going to listen to you, you have to make a really positive impact by knowing everything, knowing the familiarize about the project, familiarize about the product or services they will going to provide. Based on that, they, everybody, because everybody has a brain, everybody has a 4 kilogram of brain, and everybody assume thing, everybody judge everybody. So you have to make sure whatever you do, you need to do little bit research about the business domain, and then you go. So basically you have to do homework. Then explore the best practices for the domain you are working on. Discuss them with the stakeholders and identify the one that could be applied. So as a facilitator, business analyst is a facilitator. So as a facilitator, you have to provide the option of complicated problem and provide the option of the solutions. So stakeholder can pick one, what would be the viable option for them, for the business, for the project, right? So that is really wise to use or explore the best practices to solve any domain specific problem, right? So if I give you the example, so if Tesla is building Model 3 and they are using some kind of battery, I'm just giving you a very high level hypothetical example, right? So they can use dry cell, they can use lithium ion cell. There are a number of ways, they can use a different kind of things. And all the battery pack has their advantages and disadvantages. So what you as a business analyst will going to do, you will going to explore, what would be the best uh, battery pack or what kind of power battery we will going to implement and what are the advantages and disadvantages. You can prepare one document, I have explored this, I have analyzed this is the result. You can create a PowerPoint presentation, everybody will going to be happy. You will be become a rock star over there. So these kind of things will going to impact or establish you as a business analyst, and it will going to uh, give you the high impact within a project. Everybody will going to listen to. So this is the thing you have to get involved and provide the solution rather than being last bench seater and not involved in anything. When researching, make sure the reference material you are exploring it is with contemporary timeline. There is nothing more embarrassing to find spend days and reading about or research about some material and you find out it is outdated. So it is always, whenever you are finding any sort of document, just check the date before go and explore anything. If it is outdated, some technology or some perspective, whatever you are referring, and it is very embarrassing moment where you are able to find in a JD session, no, this is outdated. Then you wasted probably number of hours or days to research about something, right? So that you have to make sure these are the things you have to make sure before going to any session, any JD session or any other session. So let's talk about what we will going to do or you will going to do during the session. So first of all, not a single question is stupid or irrelevant. If you don't understand, just ask the question. Interrupt everybody and ask the question. What do you mean by that? What are you trying to prove, or what are you? What is your point in this discussion? You can ask them. You can ask that any technical acronyms. What does it mean by JAD session? What do you mean by that? I didn't know that. Can you please tell me? So just gather the information, consume whatever you can get. Never get out focus or just think or assume that I can Google it later. You can ask them. You can Google, always Google, but you can ask everybody, or anybody during the session interrupt them. It is always highly encouraged whenever you are exchanging the knowledge. Everybody will going to appreciate if you don't know something. But once the you are at a higher phase, or later on, the project on really high gears, and you will going to ask some certain things which is not appropriate time to ask some certain question, then it will going to create a very negative impact. So you have to see that where are you going and where are you asking. When and where is very important for ask the questions. So never hesitate to ask the question during the session related to that. And also, ask all the stakeholders if you don't understand some business requirement or some technical thing. You can always ask, can you give a simplified version, or a little bit state down to a technical, to a little bit functional, so I can understand. So you can ask them. It will never going to hurt. And the second point would be the identify stakeholders and their roles in the daily routine. As I ask you or tell you earlier, that you have to identify the stakeholders, their roles, responsibility, and what's their standing during this particular project is must to know for you. And you need to prepare a document for yourself. You don't need to share with anybody. That is for you only. Make a note of what services, any kind of services or a product, that you will going to produce or buy, that the product of that particular project are used to support their business activity, what trigger them, and why they are doing this particular project, what kind of things they are triggering this particular project as well. You need to identify and talk about. Learn who does what and when and why. So as we discussed earlier, you need to learn about, you know, all the stakeholders and your team member, who is doing what, who is doing why, and when they are doing all those things. So when, why, and who. Those are the questions you need to ask yourself, and then ask to the stakeholders or the project manager, whoever the appropriate person to ask. Pay attention. Never distract. Never think about anything else. Never think about something which is distracting this particular process during the session. Just focus on the session, nothing else, because it is very highly focused information sharing meeting. Probably you will have these kind of meeting you know once in a month or something. It will going to conclude everything. Whoever works a month, a time period, or a long time period during the thing, so it is a hundreds of hours, probably thousands of hours, depending on the number of people who is working together within a team, including stakeholders. So it is a number of hours and conclusion of everything. So you have to pay attention, and you are the facility provider. So you have to alert your all senses all the time, hearing, listening, everything, and talking as well. You are at your best. You have to be at your best. What they imply, why they are doing something, what is the policy, what are the documents. These rules might require further investigation. If somebody says something, we need a further discussion, further investigation. You have to make a point and provide the solution. And what would be the impactable solution or highly impactable solution? Those kind of things you need to do by paying attention. Never lose your attention, otherwise you will be in a huge trouble as a business analyst, because that is your solo duty to provide the facility and all the engine running. See the requirement management cheat sheet for the interview question and guideline. So those kind of cheat sheet I will going to provide you later. And yeah, so this is the during the session, um, what you need to do. So after the session, once the session is over, probably after 1 day or immediately or anything, follow up with the stakeholder on the action item. So those are the action item you will going to decide, or all everybody will going to decide, and you have to make the uh, what is it called, the documentation about the session as well. So it might be a minutes of meeting documentation which has some action item to deal with. So action item, somebody has to take a action, or somebody who is owning some certain things to do. So on their shoulder, they have to, keep up with this thing and
Uh,
finish some
what
certain
would be
things.
the, what would be the name of the document? I mean, is there any like
It's called minutes of meeting.
needs of meeting?
Let me send you the example of minutes of meeting. This might be very, very useful. So I'm just, I send you over the Slack. So minutes of meeting is necessary. Otherwise, everybody will going to work on something, and then, everybody says it didn't belong to me. There is no action item assigned to me. So you have to follow up with the stakeholders related to all action items, need to take care after the session. That is necessary. Without black and white or without having proper documentation, a lot of people forget about a lot of things. You have to create those documents, provide those documents to the right person, so they will not going to forget. You have to keep talking about same thing again and again with them, and probably with everybody as well. The second point is document what you gather so far. Send the stakeholder for the review and feedback. Right, as I told you, you have to create document, send document to the right person for review and feedback. So everybody will be engaged in the same channel, and everybody has the same kind of mindset. There will be no false assumption. Start requirement analysis process. So you have to start requirement analysis in the process after the session. So whatever the requirement you have gathered, you have to analyze that. So you start doing that. That is the next action item for you to do. So sometimes what happen, you have arranged a session, but during that session, some of the key participants are not present, or they are not available at that time. So what you need to do, sometimes you arrange meeting and it's a huge session. Everybody has to include it. There are a couple of agenda you have to discuss with some certain key people, and they are not available. So you can ask them to provide a representative on their behalf. So if we talk about some senior person who is have dedicated office and dedicated staff, so that person is not able to attend all the meetings, they will going to provide a representative. So that representative make sure representing the person and the office related to that particular discussion. And you can ask them or assign, ask them any of the question whatever you want to ask with the particular key person, and gather all the requirement information as well. Conduct a session as planned, follow up after with the missing participant. So after, whatever, the show must go on. The greatest showman always says the show must go on. Whatever has planned, you will going to stick to that plan. You will going to discuss with all the other key people, and whoever is missing, you can follow up with them after the session. Record the entire session and provide the link to all participants. So if somebody is missing something, and then after a few weeks, that person will going to say you didn't included me in the session. So you can provide the link. If anybody miss or anybody are not able to make it to the particular session, you can provide the link and tell them, please refer the link and ask me any question you have. We will going to discuss about it. So after that, you will going to arrange a follow-up meeting with that particular key person, a small meeting, one-on-one, and you can ask all the things about whatever discussed during the session, and gather all the requirements you need to gather from that particular person. Because right now we are living in 2020, everything is remote. It is hardly anybody will going to meet one on one, or gather in one meeting room, 10 or
How
15
about
of
like in
people.
coming years, like in 2021, can we expect everything to be normal, or even 2021 will be the same like a remote?
I don't
Because
think so.
we
It
have
will be normal. Probably next 2 3
so
years.
2 3 years.
Yeah,
Don't look at the vaccine.
vaccine has a schedule for 2 years, so you have to take the dose every frequent time. So it has to be repeated. And during that vaccination program, during these 2 years, you are not immune to the virus. You will get the virus. You can suffer from the virus as well. So you have to wear the mask and everything. So it will not go away. Initially, I thought the same thing. 2021 would be the better one, but it is the same thing. It will going to continue. So remote will going to. It is the new way to doing business. It is a new normal. Reschedule to that schedule and check if they want to meet remotely. If a person is not able to present in the meeting, you can connect with that person remotely. And also, there is an option of reschedule. If the person has a higher precedent during the process, then you have to reschedule the meeting whenever that particular person is available. You can schedule or reschedule that particular meeting over there, that time, and you can have the discussion. Redefine the meeting agenda to achieve with only those who are present. So you can quickly, whenever probably you will know, like uh, one day early, that some participant not able to make it. So you can change the agenda. Whatever the agenda you will going to discuss with that person, you can eliminate those agenda and include some more agenda with whatever whoever is present in that particular session. Consider alternative solution, alternative interview technique to ask the person who is missing. If nothing is working, if the person is not giving you time after follow up with probably like 2 3 times, then you to escalate this matter immediately to the project manager or whoever is sponsor for the particular project. Otherwise, nobody will going to know that what's going on, and everybody will going to ask you the question that what's going on, why it is not there yet, right? So that is the thing. Now we will going to talk about the analyze requirement. So this is I think this is the yes, these three slides are the end of it. So analyze the requirement. Let's talk about it. After you elicit all the requirements, your role as a business analyst is to analyze this requirement. As each requirement is analyzed, it generally leads to a further question. This requires a BA to probe further until the relevant issue are cleared. So you have to, whenever you analyze some requirement, it will follow up with some question. So I would encourage you to create a documentation related to some specific requirement, related to some specific question, follow up questions. So once you have that document ready, you will prepare yourself for the follow up meeting with some candidate or the stakeholders, right? Those are the action item thing you will going to discuss with. So requirement analysis is an interactive process, which means that you will need to talk or meet the business again and again and until you get the call or a good or smart requirement, right? So it is a repetitive or reoccurring in a cycle motion. So you have to do looping activity to ask all the questions about the things, whatever the requirement is, whatever the follow up questions associated with that. So there are some points you need to ask to yourself and to the stakeholders. So requirement categories. What type of categorize? You can categorize some requirements. You gather some bunch of requirements. You can categorize as a, this is a front end requirement. This is a back end requirement. This is database requirement. This is a DevOps requirement. This is deployment requirement. Those kind of stuff. On a high level, you can gather and bunch it together into one type of categorization. So you have to categorize it, and you need to categorize in the documents. Otherwise, if you think in your mind, that is not possible. You have to always create a document. Requirement prioritization according to their level of urgency to the business. So you already discussed during the session about it. To prioritize the requirement whenever you are discussing, you just need to create document out of it, and sometimes you will going to get some equal precedent requirement. So you might have follow up with the stakeholders or the correct person to ask again that these are two requirements which has the same precedence. So which one you want me to provide, or give the higher precedent between these two requirements. So it always ask and sync up with follow-up meetings or one-on-one. Define the assumption and constraint. You have to provide constraint. The life is not the infinite thing, and everybody has a limited resources. So you have to provide constraint and define the assumption. If we are doing some particular requirement, at the end of the result, we will have something like this. So suppose somebody building a website, so they have some certain functionality. It will going to change some drop down into radial button. That is the requirement. So you will going to define the assumption that we will going to create a radial button. At the end of the assumption, the conclusion would be, um, whenever we are converting that into radial button, you will end up with the radial button with four option or three option, whatever it is, right? So those are the things you will going to set a assumption in the documentation, and also you will going to set the constraint about the particular assumption or particular requirement. And once you have the document, you need to share with the stakeholders for the review and talk about it further. Verify the requirement. That is the thing. Verify the requirement. You will going to talk with the stakeholders and verify it, whether it's good, bad, ugly. What do you think? What is a good requirement? You need to ask yourself, what is the good requirement, right? Who is the requirement owner? Some specific requirement falls under the front end development. So front end developer lead, he is the person of the owner of this particular requirement. So you need to define all requirement ownership. Whenever you are following up with them rather than asking bunch of people and bothering everybody. Validate the requirement. You have to validate as well. Verify and validate whether it's correct or not. The the person who provided the requirement, you need to ask them, is it valid requirement? That's what you are meaning. This is the correct assumption. That's what you need to represent in the documents. Is it really requirement? That the question you need to ask yourself. Is it a really requirement? Is it necessary? And ask to the project manager as well. Is it a really requirement? Resolving competing requirements. So whatever the competing requirement, so that is a very bad idea. So if we have similar kind of features doing the same kind of stuff, and we have two separate requirement doing the same thing but a different way, that is not a good idea. Your company will going to struggle about doing the same thing but in a different way. And some people believe that this is the good way, this is the good way. The same thing happened with Nokia, but on a very larger scale, and because of that, Nokia Sync today, right? So they have Symbian operating system in their cell phone, and at that time, Android and iOS came. So they want more interactive, less Symbian, but more kind of a touch screen friendly operating system. Some says let's go with Android. Some says no, we will going to develop another Symbian. So they develop another Symbian. There are two teams working parallelly on same kind of stuff, and because of that, they have double the budget. They have money at that time, but you will be end up using all the money. It is not infinite. There is everything is finite, everything is defined, everything is limited. So they ran out of money. Because of that, they have to sell the company to Microsoft. So this is just an example, right? So competitive requirement has to be eliminated or resolved by the business analyst. Root cause of analysis. You need to do a root cause of analysis. There is a fishbone diagram we will going to see in the later of this particular, probably not this chapter but later, a fourth chapter we will going to discuss about it. Fishbone diagram, five ways techniques and everything. Define assumption, dependency and constraint. That you are large list unrecognized requirement.
I cannot see the screen. I mean, I can see still like analyze requirement questions.
No, it's. I'm just giving you a little bit idea about what is define assumption. How you define it.
Okay, okay.
You need to extract the not requirement for the list. It is the assumption, dependency, project task, and communication. Anything else, but not develop a requirement. So you have to define and analyze the assumption associated with that. How we can analyze a simple requirement. These are the example how we can analyze the requirement. So uh, not this one, requirement question, right? The first question is, what is the current as is status? Is this a new functionality? So whenever you are doing any kind of requirement gathering, what is the current status of the particular requirement? Is it a new functionality we will going to develop, or is it exist we will going to enhance a little bit? Because the current status could be a system A already send a daily feed to system B. So there is a system A and system B. Those are the parallel system. System A is the old one and system B is the new one, right? So It is a business as usual. It is preferred to add this is assumption to make sure it is documented somewhere in document and not missed. But the same time, it is not listed as development requirement. So if we are enhancing some of the feature, enhancement, if it is not part of the requirement, so it is not part of the development requirement, but it has to be not missed. It has to be, documented, not missed in somewhere, but not in the requirement, development requirement. Enhancement, some of the small features or something. And you have to do the gap analysis. If there is a system A is exist and you will going to develop a system B, there should be a gap between them. There are some version number as well as some certain features or a functionality has been enhanced with these two systems. So you have to do a gap analysis as well and try to understand whether it's a requirement or whether it's a function enhancement during the process, because requirement is something which is new. If it is function and enhancement, you can create a functionality enhancement which already exists. We will going to make it more polished or more user friendly or something like that, right? How will this feed be sent, manually or automated? What are the need to understand from the question is whether the daily feed will be sent automatically by the system. Then this will make it requirement, right? If it is automated, if anything is happening automated, then that is a process associated with that. You have to create some certain functionality, a new functionality which is doing automating stuff. So that is called requirement. It could be feed directly manually as well. So that is not requirement. The person will going to shoot some emails or something, or anything status report, right? So that is not requirement. But if it is doing automated, then it is required. I have to create a report which will going to auto generate and auto send to us to a end user weekly. So that is requirement, right? It is doing automatic. If I am not doing automatic, then it will be a manual. Manually it has to send, because that is the thing they want to establish. That is the need. They want to provide the report to the users, some certain users. So either they can do manually or automated. If it is automated, then that is a part of requirement and it is a specific requirement. Create an automated system for that. We understand what is a trigger for the system A to send the feed. So you need to understand from system A to system B what would be the trigger dependency. So to generate some particular report from system A to system B, there has to be some certain triggering event. That person has to pay this so and so amount. The person is active in the system. Then we can send the feed. Otherwise, we are not able to send the report. Is it requirement in a scope for the project? You need to ask that, is this requirement in scope of the project? Is it in the scope or is it out of the scope? If it is out of the scope, then reject it. If it is not part of the process to create a automated, they have a dedicated person and human resource to send those things manually, then it is out of the scope. In what format should the feedback send? If we will going to send any kind of report or feed or anything, it has to be some certain format, some excel sheet or some powerpoint presentation or anything, any csv file, right? So it has to be formatted. There are some certain columns, header included in it. There are some certain metrics included in there. So it has to be defined. If there is a template, we can use that. If there is not, then it has to be created. If it is there is existing template is existed, if the template is existed, then you have to see that whether we need to make any changes in the template, or we will use as it is. What are the success criteria? So what are the success criteria for the test cases? You have to define that as well, that what kind of testing you can think of about that particular process, right? And who is the requirement owner? Who is the owner of that particular requirement? You have to check that, where you can get all your feedback from, because you are not the expert on the system, right? You have to talk with some certain people about it. So there is a requirement categorization, but that we will going to talk probably tomorrow, because it's a huge topic, and I don't think so it will going to finish by today.